everyone, and welcome back to Silicon Sounds, audio for the rest of us. Today I have the distinct pleasure on reviewing a new release, the Hisenior T4. The Hisenior T4 is one of the latest releases from a company that may not be as well known as some of the larger players in the industry who produce in-ear monitors. But in my opinion, it's one of the better examples of those companies. At presently $199 US, it does come in though at a price range that has lots of competition. The Hisenior T4 boasts a 4 balanced armature driver complement, all of those being Knowles quality balanced armatures, using a 222-955 for the bass, a single, 2 Knowles balanced armature drives for the mid-range, and a single for the highs. The model numbers of those other three, I should say. Balanced armatures are the 30017 and the 29689 for those who geek out on part numbers. There's definitely been obvious care and attention paid to the design of the T4 with 3 independent soundbores and its inherent crossover design. Add to this, the T4 sports 2 dip switches, which can be seen clearly here. Very good. 2 dip switches for tailoring the sound in a few ways, 4 ways actually. The switches afford the T4 4 different tuning modes. One called balance, which it's in right now. If you can see that clearly, the switches are down. They're in the off position. That is balanced. The others modes are called Bass Plus, Vocal Plus, and Soundstage Plus. That's with all switches engaged, you get the Soundstage Plus. Each setting pretty much does what it says, with the Soundstage Plus being exceptional as it just not a bass and treble boost, but imparts a liveliness and crispness to the sound without sacrificing any of the best attributes, being clarity and openness, and organics. The T4 is easy to drive. It's very easy to drive. Most exclusive balanced armature sets I have seen or listened to are quite easy to drive, but that's where caveats have to come in. It's best in my listening with respect to synergy paired with a warmer source. For example, the original Iffy Hit DAC paired very well with the T4. The T4 can be quite resolving, and choosing a more capable source is always recommended. One thing for sure, and I have to point this out, is that tip selection is critical with the T4. It's critical to the sound, in particular how it affects the bass frequencies. I've had to move down from my usual large size tips to medium tips to get a proper insertion. As we can see from the very prominent nozzle, that was not hard to achieve, but in order to do that, I had to go down a size in tips. Apart from that, it really made a really huge difference when the synergy for source and tips comes into play. Sound quality, though, is where the rubber always hits the road with any IEM. And what I'm going to say may hurt a few people's feelings, but reality will do that sometimes. All the tech in these IEMs, all the marketing and the buzzwords in the world mean absolutely nothing if the product behind those terms sounds like dirt. Thankfully, Hisenior seems to have the tuning down to a mastered mix of art and science. And I've heard 4 of their IEMs, and each one the sound quality has been commensurate. Very, very good. To these opinionated ears, it's very satisfying. And that's really the great thing about reviewing IEMs such as this. Consistency, Hisenior has definitely shown that in terms of quality of manufacture and in particular sound quality. I will add that with respect to the switches, the majority of my listening impressions are made with the switches in balance mode, although other modes are used for additional comparisons. So let's get right on to the specs of the Hisenior T4. Well, 4 Knowles BAs, 1 for bass, 2 for mids, and 1 for treble. Two-way integrated crossover, it's passive. Frequency response, 20 to 22 kilohertz. Sensitivity, 115 decibel at 1 milliwatt. Impedance is 19 ohms, and so on and so on. And it does come with a nice kit and a 2-pin cable as well. Let's get into build, fit, and quality. I hope you can see this clearly. This is a beautiful IAM, finished in a stunning sky blue theme with an attractive decorative faceplate design. Build quality matches the looks, being excellent with the smooth resin shells finished absolutely flawlessly. You won't feel any edges. Everything is smooth. Very nice. The unboxing experience was no frills, with the box with the usual Hisenior, very high quality plastic case inside. But really, Hisenior is concentrating on where it really matters. The included accessories also exude the same quality level as everything else. The included cable is of good quality, but I did not pair the included cable with the T4. I found that my Luna Shop's go-to SEC cable did a better job of having it sound a little bit more open and clean, although the included cable is of apparent high quality. With respect to fit, the Hisenior T4, I'll bring in the T2 just so you can see. The T4 and the T2 are both chunky, but I would add the chunky award probably a little bit more to the T4, especially with this extra rib here. That's probably one of the tubes with the BA driver. That being said, it's on the large side of medium, but I found that fit was great, in particular when deeply inserted, and long listening sessions were not an issue whatsoever with respect to comfort. Okay, let's get to the real meat of this review, the bass. Well, the lowest frequencies on the high T4 are significantly impacted by the tip selection and insertion depth. I need to put this disclaimer out there. You will have a number of people listening to it says it does not have bass, it's too lean. I did not find that. You have to spend time on synergy and fit. With other Hisenior earphones, including my beloved T2, I also had to work on getting that deep insertion, going down the tip size, making sure everything is right, and the sound really opened up, particularly in the bass. Once these things are addressed, then a true evaluation of the T4's bass capabilities can move forward, can proceed. The T4 does not lack bass, but may not be on offer or have on offer what a die-hard bass head will appreciate. And it won't. I'm not a bass head. I'm more about quality, organic sound. Bass on the T4 is balanced, articulate, controlled, and detailed. Bass does go low and ranges from slightly lean in the balance mode. Remember again, we have those switches here. In the balance mode being switch 1 and 2 down or off, to a more forceful and full sounding bass in the Bass Plus and Soundstage Plus tuning modes. Circumstance by Wayman Tisdale has excellent definition and clarity in the low end, in particular when the two previously tuning modes are engaged. Stella by Gerald Simpson has a driving bass line, and it also highlighted not only the bass prowess of the T4, but the obvious effect that well-implemented tuning switches can afford the sound. Bass was clean with good driving force on this track. I actually had an attention-grabbing moment where my head popped up while listening to these. And I have to tell you, it was difficult to review these in that I spent so much time listening to the music and not the earphones, which is high praise, that it was hard to just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a review, but here it is. That attention-grabbing moment was when I listened to a track called Poem of the Chinese Drum by Hawkman Yin. If you want a track, please check that out. Wow, it was impressive. The switches here were set to Soundstage Plus mode, and the detail and clarity of this track, as relayed by the T4, was fantastic. Bass heads look elsewhere, although this has bass. But to these opinionated music lover ears, what I heard was articulate and organic playback with the right amount of impact that made me take notice. Moving on to some house music and drum and bass, which I love so much. I listen to tracks, for example, Intelligent Hoodlum by Mannix, Informer's Room by SGVO, Find a Way by Citizen Deep and Azola, and Lost in a Groove by Winnie Deep. And all these tracks benefited greatly from the additional tuning modes. I never felt I was missing anything. If anything, I was just enjoying the articulate, clean bass playback. Other genres, such as reggae, I listened extensively to a lot of reggae music. One of my favorite tracks, Here I Come from Dennis Brown, sounded amazing. It just sounded so clean. The bass didn't overhang, didn't underhang. It was just the right amount, very articulate, organic once again. In balance mode though, which is both of the switches here, set, down, 1 and 2, or off, the T4 lends itself well to light jazz and vocal tracks. The bass here can sound somewhat lean at times, but still retains the clarity and detail, though with less impact, but it's mostly felt in the sub bass. Mid bass is done well with little to no bleed noticed in the mid range, even in the enhanced bass modes. And I gotta say about enhanced bass, we're not talking overbearing bass. It still sounds quite balanced, believe it or not. The same qualities of being articulate with great detail and clarity are evident irrespective of the mode used. That's why I'm saying that the switch implementation here is very well done. Overall, the bass on the T4 is very pleasing, well done. It offers a level of flexibility that many other competitors allude to but fall flat with their switch implementation. Very well done. Get on to the mid-range. Well, the mid-range presentation of the T4 is balanced and one of clarity with an open sound signature that lends itself to an organic presentation, natural. There is a slight touch of warmth here, but just enough to steer away from it sounding sterile. There is satisfying balance of micro and macro details here with gratifying layering and separation. If anything, female vocals can be heard to be slightly more forward than male, but with a complete lack of any harshness or grain. No Worries by Robert Glasper Trio sounded great with a level of detail and control relayed by the T4 being very notable. Tracy Thorn's vocals on Protection by Massive Attack, one of my favorite groups, sounded more intimate than recessed with the natural texture of her voice coming through clearly. Tenderhearted Lover, another track I love to use for listening to vocals, by John Stoddart, also highlighted the T4's ability to extract the textures and emotions of the vocalist. In balance mode, occasionally the lower mid-range can sound slightly lean, but it's really track dependent. Of course, this is not the case in the other two tuning modes afforded by the switches. The mid-range of the Hisenior T4 is a win in my opinion. It walks the fine line between being detailed without crossing over at all into sounding clinical, not at any point. It is a musical presentation with good timbre and organics. Long listening sessions are not an issue here with a mid-range of this caliber. Let's go on to the treble. Treble is well extended with the natural quantities of air and sparkle. We're not talking about an over-embellished treble here meant to shock and awe and make people think that there's a lot of treble extension. What we have here is a natural, organic presentation. The cymbal work on No Worries by the Robert Glasper Trio sounded natural and engaging. Unfortunately, this is not the case, or has not been the case, in a number of other earphones I've listened to that just can't seem to get that track right. Some earphones much more expensive than the T4. It makes the drum kit of the incredible drummer Chris Dave sound more like a synthesized mess than the natural drum kit that he uses. Vanston Place 12 a.m. by Ronnie Jordan has a lot of upper frequency elements going on, and it followed the same trend with the cymbal work and other treble elements retaining their organic nature, sounding very natural and clean and easy to hear and discern from one another. Very satisfying. Imaging and soundstage. The Hisenior throws up a moderately sized soundstage with exact imaging. As opposed to the T2, which has a more intimate soundstage, the T4 is definitely more expansive, but not overblown. On the live recording of Stimula, the Coltrane by Hugh Masekela, the T4 relayed nicely. The dimensions of the moderately sized venue and instrument placement was stable and very easy to discern. With respect to the three axes of width, height, and depth, they are presented in natural proportions, with, if anything, width being somewhat greater, but not enough to throw off the balance. The T4's ample layering performance really added to the quality of its soundstage and imaging. Let's get into some verses here. I'm going to pull over, once again, the Hisenior T2. This is a 2BA model, and this is a 4BA model. I think the T4 is twice as expensive as the T2, or a little bit more. Yeah, about 2x the price. That being said, sound quality great on both. In the bass end of things, the T4 has a fuller and more well-rounded low end. At times, I noticed that the T2 has a more prominent mid bass. But when it comes to sub bass, the T4 definitely takes the crown. And its mid bass is not lacking. Just at times when in direct comparison, it's not as prominent as that on the T2. In the mid-range, the T4 is slightly more forward than the T2, but each have that open and detailed clarity and overall balance, suitable for long listening sessions. The T2 and T4 also boast a harsh-free mid-range. With respect to layering, the T4 does eke out a win here, I have to say, although neither sounds congested, but the T4 just has a greater sense of openness. Treble. In the T4, here gets the nod in treble. On either end of the frequency spectrum, the T4 is more extended than the T2. Therefore, it has improved sparkle and air as compared to the T2. It is apparent that the tuning goals for either IEM are very similar, that being natural sound with good detail retrieval. I'll give the nod to the T4 here in the treble as well. Both of them are keepers, but if I had to keep only one, and I don't, which makes me very happy, I would keep the T4, but I get to keep both. Let's bring another dark horse in here that many people may not know much about, the SoundRhyme SR5. I will come out with a review of these. It's already written. I just have to get it posted. Very good IEM, particularly for the price. But how does it compare to the T4? In the bass end of things, the T4 is a fuller and more well-rounded low end. At times, the SR5 does sound like something is missing here. The bass is just too taut at times in the SR5, but you only hear that in direct comparison. With respect to clarity, they're both pretty equal, I would say, but the nod goes to the T4 for more organic playback of the low frequencies. As for mid-range, let's see if I can hold both of them up here. Hopefully I'll get a focus. Very nice. Very nice. As for the mid-range, each has tons of clarity and good detail retrieval on tap. The mids of the T4 have better balance. They're more balanced than the SR5, which does have a significant and audible pinna gain. Again, there is a caveat with that, with the SR5, and that is that it is not as forgiving on poorly recorded material. A number of people have stated that the SR5 has a harsh upper mids and treble. I would say not really. It really depends on the playback chain, and then more importantly than anything else, really dependent on the track. It's not a very forgiving earphone when it comes to treble and upper mid energy. That being said, I have to give the nod to the T4. Most definitely gets a nod for beating out the SR5 and having a more natural set of sonics. It just presents a more natural and even-handed mid-range presentation. If I had to choose the two of them, well, let's go to treble first. Either treble presentation is rife. It's filled with clarity and detail. Still, the nod again goes to the T4 for its superior natural playback of treble frequencies. So all in all, I would choose the T4 over the SR5, but please don't think I'm just damning the SR5. It is less expensive than the T4 and is a very good IEM for the price, absolutely. So let's get to a conclusion. Bring all my buddies in here. What is the conclusion of this review? Well, the Hisenior T4 is a very good IEM. It comes off as a grown-up T2, actually, with tangible sonic improvements, as well as a well-implemented tuning switch setup that I found eminently pleasurable to listen to and use. And I'm not the biggest fan of tuning switches, but it works very well on the T4. I have no idea who or whom is tuning Hisenior products, but I strongly urge Hisenior to stay the course and please do not follow the prevailing marketing trends and practices that pop up every week. Sound quality over everything else. Of course, build quality will follow, which they seem to have down pat. The T4, as well as the T2, and Mega 5P that I've listened to are proof positive that in the end, it's sound quality that wins the race. Is the Hisenior T4 for everyone? No. No IEM is for anyone or everyone. But if you're a person who demands quality sound reproduction above all else, and are not swayed by the all too numerous Me Too IEM releases, inner monitor releases on the market today, the T4 should be top of your list when looking for an IEM in this price range. I have spent many hours listening to music on the Hisenior T4 without actually listening to the Hisenior T4. That, folks, in my book, is very high praise. The Hisenior T4 gets a definite recommendation from Silicon Sounds. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next one. Take care.